ASMR reality. He is a very talented realtor who does a lot of house tour ASMR videos. I've been watching him for a long time. I love his content. His stuff's really good. Very relaxing and just very entertaining and enjoyable. I like a lot of what he has to say. But I specifically want to talk about one video he put out recently where he goes off on a ramble, like a tangent, where he talks about financial inequality. So that's what I want to talk about. I'm about to get very political. But because as I was watching it and listening to him, there was a lot of things that I really agreed with that he said, but there was also some stuff I didn't fully understand what he's trying to get at, and also some things that I just straight up don't agree with at all. And yeah, I just find the subject to be very interesting, so I want to talk about it. Definitely go watch the video first. I think it'll definitely be a bit of like the telephone game, because, you know, I think it's really hard to communicate things. It's extremely easy to misinterpret things, and I could have very easily completely misinterpreted some things, or, you know, when you go off on these rambles, I do it all the time. Half the time, I don't even mean exactly what I say, you know what I mean? It's very easy to misspeak, which is exactly why, like, I much more love to have a conversation with him than necessarily make a video about it, because I think it's just much easier to communicate, like, immediately. That way, if there is a misunderstanding, then it's like quickly fixed up. But so I'm definitely gonna link it. It's like, I think 25 or 30 minutes into the video is where he starts his ramble. And it's pretty funny how it starts too, because he originally is just giving financial advice. Specifically, he's giving advice how he's kind of going on a rant, how he like sees people with these big, huge sleeve tattoos, and how expensive they are, because tattoos are pretty expensive. I definitely, you know, I don't have a sleeve, but I got that guy. I got this guy. Got a couple other tattoos here and there. But yeah, so if you were to get like a full sleeve tattoo, it would be, you know, somewhere around $3,000. But if you're like 25 and instead of getting this tattoo, you invest that money, then by the time you're, you know, in your 50s or 60s, it's going to be that money's going to grow just bigger and bigger consistently until it's closer to around like 200,000 or like 150,000. And he kind of goes on to talk about how it's frustrating seeing people protest about inequality. I assume he's talking mostly just financial inequality. When they have like a bunch of tattoos and new cell phones, kind of insinuating that if they didn't spend so much of their money on these, you know, unnecessary things, then you wouldn't feel like such a victim of the system. And I don't know, this part it confused me a lot because it felt very specific. I don't know exactly like what protest he's talking about. Yeah, I think I have a lot to say, but I'll at least finish this next part, because I think this next part gets really interesting. Because he then goes into the history of inequality, kind of stating, you know, I think he states how things have always been has just always been around in civilization and societies, like all the way back to Egypt and the pharaohs. And he ends up quoting, "Inequality has always existed and always will exist. The system only works with inequality." And he does mention that, like, inequality, is real, but that it is just inevitable. And I think this is definitely one of the things that he talks about that he's objectively correct in saying that, but I disagree with. He doesn't mention how inequality has different levels. He definitely goes back in the history and kind of talks about how, inequality has been much worse in the past. He doesn't necessarily explicitly say that things are better nowadays. Maybe he meant to, I'm not sure. But, to me, it's frustrating because, like, there's different levels of inequality. Like, the fact that we did used to have slavery and things used to be really bad back in the day with the pharaoh and everything. And things have gotten better. And there is still so much, inequality, I'd say socially, but also specifically financially. I think was more so the focus of this video. And I think assuming that, I think I'm a good example, right? Because this is something I'm very passionate about. And it's extremely obvious to me how bad things have gotten, because I think it's gotten so much worse than it was, like 15 years ago. As far as the wealth inequality and different things like that. And, I'm pretty well off for the most part. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. And he definitely talks a lot in this video, like, how, like, kind of pick yourself up by the bootstraps and work hard. And I think, to me, there's obvious truth in that, but I think it's changed so much. The game has changed so much. The system is completely different. Not completely different, but it's a lot different than what it was like 10 years ago, let alone, 5 or 6 years ago. And as far as the inequality goes, like, I'm well off, but I don't think it matters how well off you are. You should always be battling inequality. It's the same thing with, who was that one artist, Billie Eilish, who, donated a lot of her money to charities. I think that's awesome, and I think we need to be constantly battling inequality, because if we don't, then we start to move back. It is a constant battle to try to progress things, and I just really don't like that sentimentality of, this is how it always has been, this is how it's always going to be, because, like, it feels like giving up. Like, it's a very nihilistic way of looking at things. Because I think we should at least try. Maybe we will fail, and, it is true to where inequality will always exist, but we can at least mitigate, or at least we can, like, the wealth gap between, billionaires and poverty, we can at least, like, lower the gap. We can we can make stuff a little bit more equal. There's no perfect system, but, we can at least try to progress and change things. So, That was definitely one big thing that I kind of wanted to mention. And he does go on to mention how poor people's bare necessities should be met, but that if people want anything like more than just the bare necessities, then like you need to work. And I really like this view. I really agree with this. I think it's a very socialist way of thinking. I think I think it's important, especially, like while people are down, to help them out and get them the resources to help them out of their slump or, their addiction, mental illness, which are typically the two most big causes of homelessness and things like that. And I would love to talk to him specifically about like what constitutes as bare necessities, because I don't really think modern America meets that. They definitely try to. This ASMR reality kind of goes on to talk about how, there's like 40 million Americans on food stamps. And even other examples of that, there is like unemployment and homeless shelters. He doesn't necessarily mention those things, but that's something I wanted to mention specifically because these are all, food, shelter, water, it's all bare necessities. But at least where I'm from in Utah, it is hard. They do a terrible job meeting these bare necessities. The homeless shelters are constantly full. They don't actually provide any good resources to help get them back into society, to kind of rehabilitate people. And even unemployment is like a joke. It's like something like a fourth of your salary that you were making for like, I think 6 months or something like that, maybe a year. But even then, like if you're living paycheck to paycheck, like you're cooked. You're so screwed. Like you just won't. You're done. Like that's crazy. Anyways, back to like his video and what he was talking about. He mentions being raised in poverty and working his way out, which is kind of like the American dream, and it's also very impressive. And I think that's like a big message that he has that I also really, really like, is that like you can do it, you can like get out of poverty, you can reach the American dream, but like you need to like keep positive and keep trying and focusing, and like you gotta work hard, you gotta work really hard. And I'm kind of split on this because yes, like I definitely agree with that. It definitely is possible, and you definitely do need to work hard. And I think those are all good qualities, and I definitely think specifically keeping positive, because that's one thing that I think not a lot of people talk about with my generation, and I think that is just the effect of how bad things are on the psyche of people around my age or younger. Because I think a lot of people nowadays feel like they can't, they can't afford a house. They will never be able to afford a house. They won't even probably be able to retire, so why even try? And I think a lot of these kind of stack up to cause, I think that's kind of the underlying cause of a lot of what ASMR reality is talking about, to where, they're like, well, if I'm never going to be able to do it, I might as well just like, be loose and just spend my money and enjoy my my life while I can, which I think is bad. It's like, we shouldn't be giving into nihilism, and I get it, it's really hard. I myself am a very negative person. I'm a pessimist. I'm very nihilistic. I very much feel like things aren't going to get better, they're never going to get better. But it's exactly because I am that way that I'm so passionate about, we need to fight, we need to fight. That's exactly why we need to protest, why we need to be out there. Because, you can't give these billionaires, these people, an inch. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And if we're not constantly fighting back with everything we've got, things are just gonna keep getting worse. And I do legitimately believe that we can, make things better. It's not so just simple as inequality is always here and always will be. It's we can improve things. And I think the main reason why I was so bothered by some of the work hard stuff was because, not even because, that's what ASMR reality was talking about, but because it's what a lot of, older generation people say, because it still is true to some extent, but I would go further to say it was more true back then. Once again, it's not that simple. Just because one person can do it doesn't mean that everybody can. You know what I mean? Especially with, I think a great example is, I think there's multiple things, because also hard work is important, but there is also a level of just pure luck also needed. For example, when I graduated, it's right when COVID hit. Every company was downsizing. Nobody was hiring. Everybody was on a hiring freeze. And I was able to get hired just by sheer luck. Sheer luck. Honestly, I went to a job fair, a digital job fair, and it was a flop. I wasn't able to talk with anyone. I think I put my resume in, and just happenstance, somebody was able to see my resume, called me up, and gave me the job, and it was insane. And so I think, but obviously, to get to that point, I did have to work really hard in school to graduate, and get a GPA. So it is a mix of luck and working hard, and because you still need the opportunities to show that. But I also think things have just changed so much, from what they used to be. I don't want to say that the American dream no longer exists, but I do think the American dream is significantly more difficult to achieve than it used to be. Yeah, I wrote a bunch of stuff, so I was trying to find specific examples, but all the stuff I wrote is so disorganized. It's awesome. But I think a really good example is right, so I ended up leaving my job, which wasn't the smartest thing. You should always have a job lined up before leaving it. But I had my reasons. And I have about, 5 years experience working as kind of a digital engineer and a data analyst. And hard, then you'll move up. It's not, it doesn't really exist anymore. It doesn't, it really doesn't. Like even the idea, like, I've literally put out hundreds of applications to get a new job. I've had, 6, maybe 8 interviews so far. And, half of these interviews are for jobs that that pay like half as much as what I used to make. Because right now I just need like a job. I need something to keep me afloat. And even then, I can't even get these jobs that pay half of what I used to make. And even the idea of being overqualified is directly opposed to this idea of an American dream of like, if you are a hard worker, if you're out there doing stuff, then like you'll be able to make money. Like, you work hard, you get paid well. But like, the fact that like people definitely have said I've been overqualified, and it's like, what are we doing? What overqualified? I want to do the job, and I get why they're scared, because they think I'm gonna leave to go find another better job. But the idea of being overqualified, it's like, it's insane. It's insane. Like, you're telling me I can do the job too well, so you won't hire me. Like, I'm too smart. I'm too skilled for a job. How does that fit in? I think another example in modern America is outsourcing. There's all this stuff put on, all the blame is being put on immigrants and stuff like that. But in reality, companies can just outsource their work to like foreign countries where the US dollar goes like 5 times as far. Like, it doesn't matter if I can do the work of like 2, like developers. If a company can hire 3 developers in a foreign country, for cheaper, because like the US dollar, can just go so much further there. And then because of this, there's less and less, blue collar, or not blue collar, white collar type of jobs, in America, which is also just slowly eroding the middle class. And I think that's what was kind of frustrating, is that I feel crazy. People aren't talking about how the middle class is being eroded. And also his example, he does give an example of how he sees a lot of 24, 25-year-olds, come into buying houses. I guarantee you, I can almost promise you, most people I see who are, that age buying houses, they got money from their parents. That's it. It's that simple. They had the opportunities, or better job opportunities, based on, things like nepotism. That's why I get so mad when people lose their minds about DEI, when like nepotism is the problem. And if you don't know what nepotism is, it's just like, if, like, let's say my dad's a big business owner, and then he just hires his kid for a job, there's a good chance he's not even qualified for that. Maybe he is qualified, but he doesn't have the experience, but he still gets the job anyways, just because he's family. And it's like, how's that fair? You know what I mean? Like, it's not fair. And I think, that's kind of what this ASM artist mentions a lot, is that there is is that inequality, and so you do have to work harder. And like he does mention one thing I do really like, where he says like, you may hate the system, but like you're still part of the system, so like you gotta just like do it. But once again, that's why I just don't like the idea of like, we're just like, well, that's the system, it is what it is, you know? Like, what? No, if humans thought like that their whole life, we would still be under the monarchy, you know what I mean? Who's to say there isn't another government system that we haven't tried yet, you know? Even like communism, the idea of that is only 100 years old, which in the span of the thousands of years that civilizations have been alive, is nothing. It's nothing. There are other ideas we can try, you know. And I'm not necessarily saying we should try out communism, but I'm saying there have yet to be ideas created that could solve issues, if that makes sense. That's another thing I really want to talk about earlier, where is the demonification of the working class, the demonization, like kind of just shitting on the lower class. Because like, it's frustrating to me, why is the focus always on the working class? They're not working hard enough, that's why they're poor. You're blaming them. Like, they're lazy, they're not working hard. Yet meanwhile, I guarantee most millionaires and billionaires are extremely lazy and don't work hard. If you are a capital investor, you don't work hard. The idea that I could, if I was like a nepo baby, you know, I turned, I don't know, 26 or whatever, my parents give me $20 million. It's taxed or whatever, I don't know. That's another thing I will say, ASMR reality, I would have loved to talk to him more about financial stuff, because I don't know. I really don't. Other than I do know, if you start out with a lot of money, it is much easier to keep yourself at the top. And I think a great example of this is landlords. Because landlords can literally be the most lazy MFers in the world. And they can make a ludicrous amount of money. It's not to say that all landlords are like this, but I guarantee you've probably interacted with some. I most definitely have interacted with some terrible landlords. And you can be ethical about being a landlord, but I do think a majority of them aren't ethical. It makes me so mad to think about how, like, a lot of them are, like, not only having their mortgage paid for by the renter, which means they're already, like, making capital for essentially free, but then they even make extra money off just charging them that much. And it's like, oh, it's evil. It's crazy. It's like so evil. It's crazy to think about. Especially because then even a chunk of that money still being, for the mortgage, is still being taken by the bank. And that's what I mean, like, there's even people who, like investors, especially if you're investing in land, like, you can just buy an entire apartment or multiple apartment complexes, and you can hire somebody else to manage it, and you literally do nothing, and you make passive income. I mean, there's supposedly, they always say like, oh, well, you know, they're taking a risk. What the do you mean? People need houses to live. a risk? How is it a risk? That's like me like buying a bunch of water and then being like, ooh, I don't know if I'll be able to sell this water. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's very frustrating to me. And you know, maybe I'm being dumb. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm certain it's not that simple. I'm certain there's a lot more caveats to it. And I would love to learn more about that sort of thing, because I am really interested in it, because to me it's extremely frustrating to see. Because honestly, it does just feel like we're still living in like the feudal area. I mean, literally, we call him a landlord, the lord of the land, and they're not doing anything. They're not. I guess they are providing the service of like letting you live somewhere temporarily, and like you can leave with like kind of nothing. But I just think the amount of money that they make off of you is just ludicrous. Like, it needs to be more controlled, and I don't think like people or companies should be able to like own as much, like a near like so much land, you know. It's crazy. It's very frustrating. But and even then, you know, like a lot, like even if you have tens of millions of dollars, like let's say like, yeah, from like your rich parents or something, you can just invest that. You can just invest it and you can live off the dividends while still like matching inflation, you know. If you live like a smart and you're not spending a ton of money, if you have a house paid off for, and it's just like the system's broken. Like the system's obviously broken. And so I don't like the demonization of this sort of thing, where I look at somebody like Elon Musk, whose daddy owned an emerald mine. If my dad owned an emerald mine, I could probably make some good investments too. You know what I mean? Because once again, like, luck is so heavily involved. Even the idea of risk is literally luck based. It's not merit based at all. It's it's luck based. It's literally called risk. It's a chance. It's gambling. Like, so it's very frustrating when I hear people, especially to where like, because I get it, I don't think this should downgrade the hard work and effort that people did to, you know, escape poverty, like ASMR reality, because like my parents did this as well. You know, my parents were very poor. My mom never went to college. My dad went to like, I think some like tech trade school or something. I'm not sure, but they slowly worked their way up. My mom ended up working her way up really far, working at a hospital. You know, she just started as like a secretary and slowly worked her way up to like, you know, different levels of admin until she was like a manager, and then she was like managing like a whole division, you know. And you know, that's still really impressive. And it's cool, but I think it's so much different nowadays. It's so much harder to do that. You know, maybe it's not, but it definitely feels like that. And I think that's why it's just so important that like we don't give up, you know. And like, I think, sorry, I'm trying to think of some specific examples, because I think it's me claiming that it's harder isn't the same as showing you. But I think even the example of like, okay, yeah, let me give this example. So I was able to get a like starter home with my wife. I also, let this be known, this was only because my wife's grandma is extremely rich and and gifted like all our grandchildren a crap ton of money. And so because of this, we were able to at least pay for the down payment, and then I had a good job. So we were kind of chilling, and she's a nurse, so she makes alright money. And so, we were able to get in, but we were only able to get in a couple years ago because, before that I didn't graduate. And the idea that if I bought my home 5 years prior, it literally would have costed like 100. Like, it would have costed 25% less, 30% less. Like, that's insane. Like, that's insane. even, like, literally, if, like, it's, to, like, be told that, like, oh, like, you can do it, you just gotta work hard, when it feels like, once again, it's just luck. If I was born 5 years earlier and graduated 5 years earlier, and I would have been able to save up enough money to buy a house 5 years earlier, it would have been easy. And I get the sentimentality that if you just brute force it, that you can do it. But I think the idea needs to be obviously working hard, but I think there needs to be more of a focus on the positive mentality, which, is my reality, did mention, and I am very happy you mentioned that, because I think that's the hardest part, because it's so easy to get down, it's so easy to give in to this nihilism, because, like, yeah, the houses, they're so expensive. Even the healthcare system is so, like, cooked. Like, what are we doing? You're telling me if I don't have healthcare, I can just go bankrupt? What? That's insane. That's insane. That's so insane. It's especially frustrating when, like, if you're poor and you have no money, you essentially have free healthcare. But if you're in the middle class, you're screwed. Like, you just are. Even if you have a job, you still have to pay for it, which is nuts. It's nuts to me. It's such a strange, that's another thing that ASMR Reality mentions that I also don't agree with, is that, like, he kind of insinuates, oh yeah, he claims there isn't a better system out there, referring to the American system. And I feel like that ain't true. Like, I definitely get how the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Every country has their problems. But, like, goddamn, I just want some free healthcare, dude. That's, like, that alone. Free healthcare, and maybe a housing market that was, like, actually regulated somewhat. Or at least if the government paid for more programs to build more homes, so there was more supply, that would make me feel so much better, because, like, it's just, I really don't know how to communicate how different times are. Back in the day, billionaires, well, I guess millionaires at that time, they'd be kind of an equivalent due to inflation or whatever. They used to get taxed at 90%. 90%. They used to get taxed 90%. Now they're taxed at, like, not even 40. It's like 37%. That, and then all of our money's just going to the military. It sucks. It sucks. Which, it's important having money go to the military, but when we have like 140 military bases, not in America, 140 bases, not in America, how much money is that siphoning per year? How many hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars is that siphoning per year? It's crazy, but I think I'm getting a little lost in the sauce. I'm getting a little lost in the sauce. I think my main focus, because even the minimum wage nowadays is still $7.25 in Utah. What? Which I think is the federal minimum wage. The minimum wage hasn't changed since for 15 plus 20, or maybe around 20 years. The idea of 725, that's like, anything less than like 20 isn't really livable here in Utah, honestly. I think just the wealth inequality, I think the American dream used to be a lot more tangible, and I think it has increasingly gotten more and more difficult every single year. The further and further we get into late stage capitalism, then, just the more and more unequal things have gotten. And I think it's exactly because people are so complacent in the inequality that things have gotten this bad. That being said, there are good things about living the modern day. But even, I don't even like hearing, like, when people say, like, well, at least you're better than, like, how people lived 300 years ago. And it's like, yeah, and I do think it's good to focus a bit on that. I always like to focus on that whenever I eat food. I like to watch television while I do it, specifically because it makes me feel like a king, I'm gonna have my jesters do a performance for me as I enjoy my succulent meal. But, I don't think, like, you should just be grateful for what you have should take away, from the drive of wanting more, because that's what being human is. It's wanting more. It's wanting to progress. It's wanting to get better. It's like the same thing as a skill, we want to improve. That is human nature, and I think there's a lot to improve on. Also, I think people if somebody's working, if somebody's contributing to society, I don't think it's that wild to be like, hey, maybe they should be able to treat themselves to a vacation or a tattoo every once in a while. That being said, I will say I have had some frustrating experiences, because I definitely get where the frustration comes from when you see someone wasting their money, because I've definitely seen people in my life go into debt over things like vacation or like going out to eat like every day, and it's like, girl, stop doing that. Like, you definitely do need to be responsible, and it stinks, but stop doing Uber Eats, dude. Stop doing that shit. Like, I definitely really understand where he comes from, where he says, like, because there is truth to the bootstrap stuff. There is truth to, like, the working hard things. I definitely think it's not quite that simple, but nothing ever is. But yeah, I've definitely just seen a lot of people, like, just, like, buy stuff they really, you need to find a balance. You need to find a balance of being able to spend a little bit here and there to still enjoy your life, but you also need to like budget and save up your money, you know what I mean? But yeah, you know, I don't have the answers. I don't know how we make things better. I definitely think people like Zoran Mamdani, it's great to see somebody like that because it's just fair. It's like, because the thing is both parties suck, dude. I'm so done with the Republican Party and I'm so done with the Democrat Party, because the Republican Party just keeps doing evil, just straight up. Like what? Like what? What? Alligator Alcatraz. It's the one. It's literally. It's so evil that it's cartoonishly evil. Like the fact, and I think that's what's interesting, is it's so cartoonishly evil, it almost takes away the actual seriousness of how just absolutely fucked up it is. Like, whoa. Alligator Alcatraz. What, bro? Like, people would give, you know, Bush back in the day crap for, like, Guantanamo Bay. This is, like, feels a lot worse. Plus, they also reopened that, the House immigrants as well, which is insane. But then, on the other hand, you have the Democrat Party, where you have a few individuals who feel like they're really fighting, but then you have a bunch of other people who are just have their thumbs up their asses. It's so frustrating. But I think at the end of the day, that's exactly like what they want. All this fear mongering, all this, it's a new blitzkrieg. It's a new blitzkrieg of like spamming media that is to make you feel like doomed, you know, like doom scrolling. Like you keep scrolling and you just see how bad things are, everything's just going to shit. And that's what they want. They want you to feel like everything's hopeless. They want you to feel like you can't change anything. But in reality, we can't, you know, we can have people who actually want to make a difference run for offices, even in like your local area, you know, like sometimes we don't have to try to fix the whole country all at once. We can start, you know, in the cities, in your local community. But anyways, once again, I've completely forgot about what I was even going on a rant with, but shout out once again to ASMR Reality. I definitely wish I talked a bit more. I honestly really like him, and, you know, I don't agree with some of his stuff, but it's like, that's fine, you know. There's a lot of things that people won't agree with me, you know, different things. Everybody's just trying to do their best in a way. But yeah, I really wish I did come up with some better examples about how different society is. I mean, even like getting a job. Like you didn't used to have to put in hundreds and hundreds of resumes out just to get 5 interviews, and now like you have to, every interview process is like you gotta have 3 interviews. I can't even get the most basic of jobs. Like back when I was a kid, it was so much easier to get a job. Oh my god. Yeah, I used to do graveyard shifts at a gas station. That was fun. And then I worked at Ross. That was awesome. I also did, what do you call that? Landscaping. I did landscaping in the summer in a busting their balls in order to have a enjoyable life. Like, I definitely think, like, yeah, being rich, I don't know. I don't know. I've said a lot. I've said a lot. Too much. I said too much. And I've definitely probably misspoken or miscommunicated some stuff, but if you got this far, you deserve a medal, you deserve an award, you deserve confetti, and a kiss on the lips. And yeah, stay positive, stay out there, definitely watch ASMR reality, take some of his advice, especially his financial advice, because, like, you know, it is good to budget and save up and try to live within your means, just in general. It's just great advice. That's another thing I forgot to mention about nepotism, is I literally, like, know a family who, like, literally she was able to give her like, kids, like, full houses. Like, what? Dude, like, even generational wealth, I'm, like, kind of against. Like, it kind of just, it just kind of screws it up for everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much harder to climb to the top when you have people who are born at the top trying to keep you down. It sucks. But yeah, keep positive. Fight on, baby, fight on. Anyways, I hope y'all have a good night. I'm tired as hell. It's like 2 in the morning, so that's why I keep blinking out so much, and I hope y'all